Thanks, Daniel. You know, if you're in need of a physical miracle right now, then the story of my next guest is just for you. Joining me now is Jeeva Sam, pastor, marriage coach, author, longtime friend of the program, and walking miracle. Welcome back to 100 Huntley Street, Jeeva.
Oh, thank you very much, Laura. It's great to be here.
We're so delighted you're joining us. Now, Jeeva, you've had a wonderful life serving God, and you know, you and your wife have been married for 40 years. You're in ministry together. You've written this wonderful book, The Unbreakable Marriage, which I hope we get into a bit later in our interview time together. Your son Sathya is serving in ministry, and you know, God's goodness is all around you. But about 15 years ago, you faced a very significant health trial that was really scary and terrifying. Take us back to the beginning of these digestive issues and how it all started. It was in November 2019. Yeah. Tell us how it all started.
Yeah, it really started out as like gas pains. And so, you know, you just take over-the-counter medication and hope it goes away. Well, it didn't. And then I started noticing a little bit of blood, you know, coming out when I had a motion. And so my family doctor immediately referred me to a specialist. And initially, you know, he checked me out and he said, there's no cause for concern. But he said, let's do a colonoscopy anyway. And when I went back to get the results of the colonoscopy, he had a bit of a worried look on his face. He didn't have his usual sunny disposition. And so he said, Mr. Sam, I got some bad news for you. And he showed me an ugly picture of this hideous thing that was in my colon. And he said, this is what we call a polyp. And it's a fairly good size. Now, the good news is it's not malignant. However, the bad news is the location is at the hepatic flexure, which means you could experience bowel obstruction if this thing grows any further. And what we want to do is a surgery called a hemicolectomy, you know, where we basically, you know, cut out the whole polyp along with that part of the intestine and then, you know, reconnect it to your small intestine. And I'm just stunned, you know, like a deer in headlights. And I'm thinking, like, you're talking about my insides, like you're cutting a piece of garden hose and snipping it back together. I don't know if I want that or not.
Yeah, I know. And I think it really took you aback. And I think it would take anybody aback, wondering, you know, do I have to do this, God? Is this really happening? And so your response was to turn to God in prayer. And you called a friend and asked them to pray with you.
Yeah, actually, Sulojana was the first point of contact, of course. And so I'm sharing the news to her, you know, as I'm driving home. And of course, she's also stunned. She's at work. And then when she came home from work, the first thing she said was, how do you want us to pray for this? And I'm like, God, how do you want me to pray for this? And so at that point, I heard God say very clearly, pray that the polyp will be removed without the need for surgery. And I'm thinking, well, like the surgeon said, or the specialist said, that's the only way out. I ran it by a couple of other people that I know who are medically knowledgeable, and they all said, this is a piece of cake, you know, like this procedure is done all the time, and you'll just be fine, you know, 6 weeks of recovery, and you know, you'll be back to normal, no need to sweat it. But it's like, no, this is what God said, so we have to pray in accordance with it. And so even some of the people that I wanted to agree with me in prayer had some difficulty with it, because medically they knew this was an impossibility, really. And so, but thankfully I had a few people that I could trust, you know, who said, yeah, we'll pray with you, in agreement with you.
And so your friends, and there was a group who would pray and fast.
Yes.
In belief that God would move in this way. And you were hearing from God.
Yeah.
To pray that this would miraculously just be removed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Even though nobody could fathom how it was going to happen. Like most people were going to pray that the surgery will go well. And maybe your recovery will be faster. So this was a bit of a stretch, you know, even for these, you know, seasoned prayer warriors, but they trusted me enough that I'd heard from God that they're willing to pray.
And a lot of these troubles, they started in November, and so you were praying, and things seemed to get a bit better until you got to this window of Christmas between New Year's, just within 3 months.
Yeah.
And there was a surgery planned, which you didn't want to go through with. Yeah. Tell us about what started to happen at Christmas and the shift that started to occur in your health.
Yeah, okay. So at Christmas time, by the way, this is about a 6-week period, I had lost 30 pounds. And I'm not a big guy to start with. So I was really just like a bag of bones. And people in the church told me afterwards, you know what, we saw you deteriorate week to week. And we were sure, like, you're on your way out. So I was very weak. And it seemed like the more we prayed, the worse things got. And so one of the amazing things that happened over the Christmas break is we went to spend that time with our parents, my parents, in London, Ontario. And when we were there, my mom, who's now in heaven watching us, said, "Hey, have you heard of this song called Healer?" And I said, "Not totally sure, Mom." So she said, "Come into my kitchen." And my mom's kitchen was like all the cupboards, all the fridge and everything was totally plastered with paper. And the paper had verses and lyrics to different hymns in it. You couldn't tell the color of the fridge or the cupboards. And so Mom said, "Here are the lyrics. I believe you're my healer. I believe you're all I need." And then the chorus, "Nothing is impossible." And so she said, "You got to find this song and listen to it." So, when we came home, I just downloaded the song from online somehow and just kept on playing it in repeat, and that kept on going into my spirit. And I also remembered some of the teachings that we had received just before this happened, where a pastor friend of mine, preached this whole message on praise God for the breakthrough before he breaks through. And so I was like, I'm going to keep on praising God. The pain is excruciating, don't know what's happening. So anyway, I started passing like black blood, in my stools, which is not a good sign. And so eventually I ended up in ER.
Yeah.
And the doctor said, "You know what, like you're not actually losing blood, which is unusual. Yeah. However, wait for the surgery. It's just another 7 days away. Surgeon will be back from holidays and you can get it done." And so send me home. But he said, "Before you go home, we want you to try and get a stool sample for us." So they sent me home with a trap, a contraption that you put on your toilet seat, to catch any specimens, because I couldn't produce one at the time. And so things are getting like really bad, and I'm totally listless. I'm lying down on a couch, not able to do anything, just listening to Healer playing in the background. And my family is worried. Sulojana's worried. She said afterwards, I had trouble praying. Because it was like you're watching your husband, and basically, go down, and you don't know what's going on, what to do. God, why aren't you doing something?
Yeah, that's right. And so Sulojana did, pray with you.
Yeah.
And that night, as one of the nights, when you were supposed to be there collecting stool samples, you went to go to bed, and Sulojana saw a white light over you.
Yes, she said the white light actually filled the whole room.
Okay.
And so, before we went to bed, she had actually just put the sign of the cross on my stomach because she couldn't pray. That's how overwhelmed she was. And so she said, "Did you see the light?" And I said, "What light?" And then right back to sleep. And so we didn't quite understand what was going on, but later on, we would figure it out, because then the next morning, when I woke up, I was pretty sure I was going to have a real movement this time. So I rushed to the bathroom, and I could actually feel something come out, but the pain was excruciating. I told Sulojana afterwards, it was like the pain of childbirth, and she said, "Let's not go there." You have no idea what you're talking about. But something came in the movement, and as it turned out, it was not a regular movement. Because I tried to get a sample and I couldn't. And it was actually looked like a chicken drumstick. And I called Sulojana and then said, "Hey, come in, I got something to show you." She comes and she says, "Is that the polyp?" And I said, "I don't know, but let's take her to the hospital and see." So we went to the hospital, they sent it to pathology, and when the pathology report came, they basically said, "This is the exact same polyp that your specialist saw when he did the colonoscopy."
And they had actually put dye in that polyp, so they knew they were tracking with it, right?
Exactly.
When you went to the doctor and you said, okay, they said to you, "Here's what's happened." Did they have questions for you about, this is truly a medical miracle. We've got the report right here.
Yeah.
And so it says, "This confirms that the polyp has spontaneously amputated." And I said earlier in today's program, I used to be a medical ghostwriter, so I know how impossible this is and why some of your friends were like, "Well, should we pray like this?" What did the doctor say to you as he's processing this with you?
Yeah. So both my family doctor, who I saw first, and then the specialist, both said, "Tell me what happened." Because, this was just an amazing story that I never heard before. So with my specialist, he's just sitting there kind of shaking his head because he can't really believe this actually happened. But there I am, and there's living proof, because he's now got the pathology report, which says it's the exact same polyp that he saw. And so he says to me, "Do you know how rare this is?" And I said, "No, doc, you tell me how rare it is." He said, "Never heard of this happen in all my history as as a GI specialist. And so I said, so this is a miracle, isn't it, Doc? And he deflected the conversation and said, what do you do for a living, by the way? I said, I'm actually a pastor. Oh, so he said, you prayed? I said, yeah, so did I. So, a lot of others prayed with me. He said, let's just say that your prayers were answered.
Oh, it's incredible. And indeed, there were more people even praying for you that night that you rushed to the ER.
Yes.
There was a healing service at your church, and your friend stood up on your behalf. Your son did.
Yeah.
And this is the power of prayer.
Yeah.
Jeeva, it's such an incredible testimony, and I'm so thankful that you're sharing it with so many people. And you're helping people know that God is a God of miracles. God can heal.
Yeah.
And I also love that you're bringing healing to people's marriages. And The Unbreakable Marriage, this incredible book by you and your wife, Sulojana. Amazing that you guys actually had an arranged marriage. You've been married for 40 years. And I've been married 20 years. What are your top 4 tips for marriage?
Okay, so as a Christian couple, pray together. No matter what, forgive as quickly as you possibly can. Understand that some of your what you call marriage problems are not actually problems in your marriage. They're problems you brought into the marriage. Get the healing that you need for them. And then finally, set firm boundaries around your marriage to make sure the enemy has no access whatsoever.
Oh, so good, Jeeva. And thank you so much for sharing this story. I hope that God will continue to move through you in mighty ways. And we're looking forward to praying together later in today's program, praying that God will heal you and your loved ones. Thank you, Jeeva, for being with us today.
You're very welcome.